Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Buckle up. Today we have a friend of the Culture Matters podcast coming back on the show to navigate the waters of life in the storm that is creativity. Before I introduce them, here's a quote just for this episode. Something we cannot see protects us from something we do not understand. The thing we cannot see is culture in its intrapsychic or internal manifestation. The thing we do not understand is the chaos that gave rise to culture. If the structure of culture is disrupted, chaos returns. We will do anything to defend ourselves against that return. Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, preface to the Maps of Meaning.
Hmm.
Our guest today, friend of the Culture Matters podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can actually see some of their work in my office here over my right shoulder. There's a painting I'd love to talk about, what
Sure.
that means. And I love the person's the solidity, this solidarity in the person's like gaze as they look out.
Mm.
It's inspiring to me. But our guest's been on the show before. They are a great friend of the Culture Matters podcast. They're visionary as it relates to the one team and one team media. They are a steward of culture, and we are going to think through some art today. The one and only Vinnie Candelore is back.
What's up, man? I'm excited to be here. And it does feel amazing, I can't lie, to see one of my pieces behind you. Especially that one. That one's near and dear to my heart. So um yeah, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you. This is, I think, the latest we've ever recorded a podcast. I didn't know you recorded podcasts so late in the day. 6 a.m. is
Yeah, I'm starting to slack off.
yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. I love these early morning sessions that we've done. It gets my day started. I feel like my thoughts are the most clear sometimes and at this time, and there's never a camera rolling. So it's like I love talking through things. This concept is not a podcast that I've ever done before. Like I've never like this kind of conversation that the way that this kind of came about naturally excites me. So I'm gonna follow your lead, but as we talk through this thing, just you let me know the direction and let's have some fun with this. I'm really excited.
Yeah, so there's this concept, from what I understand, of is it is in how you prepare to be inspired to do a painting. What are some of the, I guess, ground rules, or like, are there certain habits, or or certain things that you do leading up,
Mm.
to the point where you're going to do a specific piece in
Yeah.
your research and prep, and that I'm curious about first.
Yeah, so yes and no. I do want to get more into a flow of that creative process. I feel like over the last since COVID, like it's been a little bit chaotic because I moved back to Pittsburgh. I didn't even really have a place to paint. I think we talked about it on the New Year's episode, just like that abrupt change in moving back to Pittsburgh. And, I'm sitting in my basement right now where I launched VC2ART and like all of the things that led to me even, stepping into my role at one team and like TCS and all the things that we've been able to do together over the last couple years. And, I had a studio downtown. I had I worked out of the office at One Team for a while. I was doing some paintings out of there. And then I just recently fixed up my basement again because in the time that I was building out the other studios, this became just storage. So, I feel like the flow of like a routine before a painting, like a creative process, looks different based off where I'm painting, who's around, are my kids running around? Am I in a secluded studio? Is there business happening around me where someone might pop in and say, like, hey, I need you to send that email or like what? So, like, the process always looks different, and it has. And I think that kind of plays into why sometimes my art is a little bit chaotic and a little bit, um, not necessarily prepped. Like sometimes I don't know what it's going to look like until I start the painting. And usually when I over plan the painting, I never start on it. And then it doesn't turn out the way I really wanted it to. I just need a general idea. I need like one thing to cling on to. Like I need like one truth about the piece that if I
Mm.
execute this truth, everything else is just fluff. Everything else is just like, and sometimes the outcome of the painting is the fluff. Like it's irrelevant. It's it's not about what the painting looks like. It's not about if I like it. It's not about if other people like it. It's not about um anything other than doing the painting and like the thoughts that come to my mind that I'm able to take captive while I'm doing the painting, because as somebody who is emotionally like I'm overly stimulated emotionally. Like I've been that way my whole life. I can't control it. I mean, maybe that's a coping mechanism that I'm saying I can't control it, but it's just I feel like it's just me. Um I feel very, very lucky to have and blessed to have that because I do see, you know, I do see. Um, I consider myself a visionary because I am constantly thinking. And that, like I said, that can lead to overthinking, over planning, over all the things. And so, man, with the painting like the one behind you, the reason why that one's so special to me is because I did that one in the middle of my studio in downtown Pittsburgh. This was actually before One Team, before, any, it was around the time I had launched my own podcast. And like, I really wanted to lean into creating for creation's sake, not just to, serve a purpose or like, meet a commission or, I wanted to just start making. And so that piece behind you, actually, Kendrick Lamar dropped an album um, in the summer of 2022. And I'm a huge Kendrick fan. Like I just loved his music, and especially like playing college football, like we'd throw on like, swimming pools and like all of his older stuff. And so when Kendrick drops an album, it's like I'm like, I want to listen to it front to back. And so I was like, I've never done this before. Let me set up a canvas and just paint what I feel while I'm listening to that. And that's that's what I came up with. So that painting was done in about an hour, from the start to the finish of me listening to that album. And yeah, so that's the raw. That's what I got. So there's lyrics in there from some of the music. There's some of the thoughts that came to mind like while I was listening to the lyrics. That's the one thing I like about Kendrick is his lyrics. I think that a lot of his like lesser known songs have some of the most beautiful lyrics that really resonate with me. Um, and so yeah, the painting is like there's moments in it where you could see the color. It's very like bright and but then there's like really bold, like you said, like his vision, like the person himself in the painting. And I didn't even know that there would be a person in that painting when I started it. Um, it really just was flowing and listening and trying to feel uh what came to me.
Mm.
That's where I
Yeah.
was with that.
Why does art matter?
I couldn't imagine living in a world, well, everything is art. So like you know, I couldn't imagine living in a world where, you know, somebody didn't think that it would be great to, you know, um, enhance things. I mean, art enhances things. It moves, it makes people feel, and you know, feelings can betray you, but at the same time, like, um, you can't ignore them. And so, you know, when it comes to like whether your business is your art, whether your, you know, your art is a painting, whether your art is a sport you play, you know, I'm just talking like those are like I'd say, you know, my family is a form of art. Like we've talked about this on a past podcast that your podcast, your life is your art, you know, your works are what you do with your art. And so like people that I think that's maybe the and you know, I want to pick your brain too because like you just went to this conference. You know, ARC was it looked amazing and um, you know, some of the things that I saw you guys sharing to your story just about like the way that they speak about art and like what that means for the future, how necessary art is for the future. I feel like it resonates with me. Um I think that without art, this world just is my grandma bought me a shirt when I was in uh 10th grade and it said art without or earth without art is just eh. And like it's so simple, but it's so true. And
Mm.
yeah, I'm definitely interested to see like, you know, based off of when you guys got back from ARC, like what are your thoughts on that? Did it shift the way that you look or did it just more so confirm the way that you look at art in the world or, you know, what were your thoughts on that?
I didn't have any thoughts around art as it related to the Alliance of Responsible Citizenship. And you know, makes me think of the Schopenhauer quote. Man, I could, each each vision, right? Each man confuses the vision of the world for his own field of vision, the limits of his own. Each man's limits the vision of the world because of his own field, limited field of vision or something. Like, oh my God, that's gonna drive me crazy. What's the quote? It's in my head. Hold on a second.
So you're saying that art like really didn't wasn't one of the things that stood out to you. You were pretty laser focused on something, but maybe that wasn't it while you were there.
Yeah, this is what I was trying to say. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world.
Hmm.
Yeah, every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world.
Yeah.
Studies in Pessimisms, the essays.
Can you explain
And
that?
like, yeah, I'm not looking through the prism of art when I'm in that medium.
Yeah.
So I'm every man takes the limits of his vision for the limits of the world for his own field of vision. You know, that's not the prism by which I'm experiencing this community through.
Yeah.
It's not something I even understand. I do recall sitting next to someone of very high accomplishment telling me that my podcast was not art and that's foolish and kind of spanking me. And I me thinking, yeah, she has a good point. She clearly knows things I don't, and you know, is wisdom I don't have. I do
Hmm.
remember that,
You know
and
why
having a
she said that?
conversation. It was a conversation about process and about um, it was about process. It was about the sacrifice. It was the postmodern conversation. How you know it seems to be sipping its seeping into every aspect of our lives. It was um, even someone that they were with, a consultant was saying how, or an investor was saying how he's got all these bright analysts that can, they can gobble down data like crazy, but they don't have the wisdom to connect. They're unable to think. Uh, there's not that tie between the actual business and all the data. There's that they don't, and it's like, well, yeah, because that component that they're missing, they have the education, they have the brights, the intellect, but the component that they're missing is like the struggle, the pain, the suffering, like the, s- the sleepless nights, the failure,
Yeah.
the decades losing in the business, or that
Yeah.
someone gains, from just life.
Yeah.
And
But
that it's like the distinction between art and, you know,
have you
commodity, the commoditization of ideas, or the commoditization of the spirit, the commoditization of everything. And this is a big theme in this conversation we're having today about, this very specific person of public interest, and like what they represent for our culture. So a resounding critique in, if we're going to talk about Dr. Peterson's work, and this arc is one of his, these components of influence, is the fight against the rationalist, reductionist, atheist, nihilist type people that are operating their, rationalism, breaking everything down to its parts, deduction, um, reduction rather, reductionist, atheist, nihilist types. Um, and anyway, so yes, I did to answer your question. That's not the prism by which I see the world. I don't have a strong.
it makes sense.
It's like I got to meet one of the professors in the academy that teaches music, Samuel. I don't know how to say his last name. And I said, thank you for your course. Like I'm I'm coming into my own, like with music. It's classical music.
Mhm.
Like I do like classical music, but I don't know classical music. Haven't been cultured. So this course on the academy is helping me level up
Yeah.
my culture. So it would be great for them to have courses on art on the academy, so I could learn about art, so I could have a thoughtful conversation with you about art, and be more than just like this idea, this feeling. So there's a feeling that I personally get. I like to have all the people that I've studied and that I aspire to all around our house. So there's pictures of John Locke and Einstein and Schopenhauer and Camus and Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett and Richard Feynman and Alexander the Great and Joan of Arc and Harriet Tubman and Alexander Hamilton, and Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Shelby, Bobby Axelrod, Gandhi, my mom, one of them. Like 30 Days of Thoughts up there. I got your paintings that represent, they're all over the house. And if I would like to have a lot more. And then obviously we live in a library essentially. There's books everywhere. Like that to me, that gives me a feeling of empowerment and accountability,
Yeah.
and
So
can't express it with words.
the person that you talk to that does the music courses, uh,
Mm.
why do you why do you feel like it's important for you to have, understanding of classical music and, further that knowledge?
It speaks to me. I love that music.
Yeah. Does it help
Um,
you with your creative process, like your writing? Do you listen to
I
that?
listen to that when I read, and I write. That's the music I listen to. I do not I don't resonate with music with words.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is I don't anymore either. So that painting behind you, I would never do that painting now. Uh,
Really?
yeah, I mean, like I still like Kendrick Lamar, um, but I was just in a different place in my life when I mean, that was 2021 or 2022 when I did that. I think 2022, I think. Um, so like, yeah, like that's the other thing is like seeing a painting up, that you did 3, 4 years ago. I remember where I was, and now like I love that painting so much because I see how far like I've come as a person.
Wow.
Nobody else has seen some of the stuff. But like when I look at that painting, it takes me back to, what I was thinking, what I was feeling. And honestly, like I love that person, but I also like feel like that person knows nothing, and then like I know that the work I'm doing now, I'm gonna look back on it in a year, 2 years and be like, that person knew nothing. And like I feel like that's like the cycle of growth that, you think you're great,
Cool.
you think that you're nothing, and then you think you're great, and then you think you're nothing, and then I think I'm trying to figure out like how to,
Yeah.
steady those waters a little bit in my life. There's been times where I've felt invincible, and there's been times where I feel like I could just crawl in a hole and never come back out. And, I think that the power of beauty, like beautiful things, people, relationships, my kids, my wife, my friends, my parents, all of the stories and I'm not still here because I like painting a lot, I'm still here because there's people and there's a future, and that future needs to be a bright future for my kids. That future needs to be filled with beautiful things so that when life hits them in the face, they can go, "Oh, like this is who I am. This is what makes me, you know, I don't envision a life where my daughter's sheltered from all the things in the world. I've envisioned a life where she's resilient enough to, get through that because of the things that I'm able to leave here for her." And so, to me, like, you know, your response, like, I understand what you're saying, like, but like art and correct me if I'm wrong here because you're the expert here, but like art is the culture. Art is like what moves culture, whether it's through music, whether it's through a painting, whether it's through a podcast. And I understand that, like, people maybe have differing opinions on that, but like I'm gonna stand firm in that your podcast is art. And I'm open to figuring out and having a conversation with someone as to why they think it wouldn't be, but like um art moves people. And I have listened to your podcast and been moved. So explain that,
Thanks.
you know? Like what do you do with that? That's art.
Yeah, I was of the belief that because I put there's intention behind it, there's preparation behind it, there's a process behind it. Each person is a unique canvas, and how that story is shaped, how that conversation is shaped by me as the host. There's a there's a there's an artistry to it. Now, at the same token, I don't think I'm operating from the lexicon on what is art, being that I truly like don't know, and I don't think I know anything about art or not, or is that so that's where it's like the blind leading the blind kind of thing. But the feeling that so now the conversation we were having generally, um it seems as though, what this conference, why it's in existence in the first place is it's becoming less and less clear in the world what something is and what something isn't.
Mm.
So there's like a general theme that's revealing itself. Is like it's becoming less and less clear
Yeah.
which nation, what nation's borders are what,
Mm.
who's allowed in and who isn't, in what process is it okay and what isn't. Uh, what you know, what are the distinctions uh, between sex and gender,
Mhm.
permissible by social interaction?
Yeah.
What what what's a fucking intrapreneur? What the fuck is that? Is it
What
somebody that just calls themselves an entrepreneur? That's it. That's an employee,
mm,
and like like that's something that drove me nuts for a while, like years, because it seems manipulative from an employment standpoint. To like, you're entrepreneurs. You're entrepreneurs. What does that even mean?
yeah.
It means nothing. It just says so. It's unclear.
Yeah.
So the whole world in in all these different contexts, it's
Yeah.
becoming less and less clear what something is and what something isn't. And
Yeah.
so as the borders and the labels become less rigid, less clear, how does that impact our sense of reality? How
Mm.
does it, how do we know who's to follow and who isn't? How do we know what's up and what's down, what's left, right? How do we judge value? And then what are our values? Like this, you mentioned this ARC conference, this and the painting that we're in art or we're within and it seems like it feels like the movie Inception in some sense. We're in an artist's dream right now with this show that
Yeah.
the audience will understand probably by part three, but they, like this Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. Well, Eric Weinstein said it great, like in a group of people. He's like, "You're all here because reacting to a much broader, larger conflict. Like that's what that's this. We're all here as a consequence of this over here.
Mm.
Um, this Alliance for Responsible Citizenship is a reaction to the moral relativism, that it's all relative. There's no one truth or meta morality, meta truth. It's just relative. It's what you think is art. It's what I think is art. It's what she thinks is art. It's what he thinks is art. It-
Well, so here's what I think the first thought that comes to mind when you say it. I don't mean to jump in there. I just don't want to lose this. I don't think it matters what I think is art and what you think is art. But what matters is the truth. The one thing that I said is the truth in that piece. And then let's talk about that. The art, the painting is just the it's the canvas where we figure out what that truth is. That like what is our true north? Like now you might look at that painting and get something different, right? Like you might look at that and be like, this painting makes me feel powerful. And someone else looks at a painting and says, this makes me want to cry, you know? But why? Why does that painting make you feel powerful? Well, let's get to that. Why does that painting make you want to cry? Let's get to that. There's probably truth underlying both of those responses that warrants your reaction. The way that you view, the way that you see it, your perspective of that painting shifts based off of your life that you've lived. And that life that you've lived is in the world, which is focused around truth. Now, there's anomalies. I believe in anomalies. I don't believe that God can't work in mysterious ways that are unexplained. But for the most part, there's a cause and effect for everything. So, like, and dude, I might just be talking out of my ass right now. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just I'm just going through this life. Like, I'm on a rock. Like, I feel
well,
like I'm trying to like, but I do
give
feel
yourself some
good
more credit
that
than that, because there's no one that's ever come on this show, me included, that isn't talking out of their ass. I think that's what. going to respond originally to your question about culture and art, in a sense, that's what art is to the culture. It's a reflection of the unconscious. It's going to speak to things that we are yet not yet able to articulate, or we are in different contexts.
Right.
Just as, what's the purpose of a comedian? To
Sure.
say things we either cannot articulate or would not be fit to or able to or
Yeah.
capable of.
Yeah.
It's another feedback loop to bring into address important narratives.
Mhm.
Art is a reflection of that, of the collective feeling, the collective nuance of that current state of humanness, right? What is a culture? It's in 30 days I thought I had it. I really thought I had it. I was like, it's a metaphorical ecosystem of shared belief created by an influencer and maintained by the alignment of the influenced. That's a helpful heuristic for like small business because in a small business culture, ecosystem, you use that word because there's multiple aspects. There's multiple aspects to what actually drives the culture, like the story and the values and the rituals that are or are not current. But that created by an influencer, that would be in that case the founder, someone with an idea, someone with a light, someone with a lantern in the dark that's moving in a direction and maintained by the alignment of the influenced. It's a push-pull.
Right.
It, it, it's I have the lantern, no one else does. I'm going this way. Are you coming? And now, and maintaining the alignment of the influence. There's a push-pull. There's a feedback. There are feedback loops between the one that starts and the one and those that continue to finish. And when it breaks, when there's a misalignment, the lantern breaks. No one can see what's up, what's down, what's left, or uh, you know, maybe we've followed for long enough to where okay, we see that this person has light, but they're not going anywhere. So we're going to take some of that light on some matches and go this way,
Mhm.
and but that was my working definition for company culture and has been, a helpful tool for small business, right? A metaphorical ecosystem of shared belief created by an influencer and maintained by the alignment of the influenced. The culture is more than, it's there, it's more, it's story, it's language, it's values, it's rituals, it's symbolism, it's how people behave, in a group, what is accepted and rewarded, what is tolerated, what is what is not tolerated, and the repercussions. It's it's how we live, it's how we behave, it's the identity of the group of people. And
Yeah.
it can be studied and broken down and re reduced to the ridiculous to understand it conceptually, but there are components of it that are are truly ineffable. Like it's like, the spirit, the human spirit. And now, and there are things that a society can do to increase or decrease the human spirit. And we watch this play out in the different societies and how they govern their people. Same thing with a business. There are things that could be done and not done to increase or decrease the human spirit. And as a student of culture, I'm constantly studying and seeing what works and what doesn't. And the code, the culture code is a book that I have yet to find nor write. So, but that it matters is enough to try and figure that out. But your question really around like art and its meaning and significance. I would say what would be clear to me is when it says a lot about the culture when we don't know what is and what isn't art, and also if we can or can't have it.
Mm,
So that would be more of like as a culture advisor perspective more than an artist be if a culture is it's unallowable, you can't have it.
yeah,
There's no freedom to express. That would be a sign like of a negative sign of agency in a culture. The inversion of that would be when we don't know what is and isn't art.
yeah,
Yeah, also, I would say, well, what does that mean? So and because it has to do with, it's all connected, but the identity of the actual culture. Who are we as whatever nation we're a part of, and who are we within the world. So, um,
yeah.
I don't know but one thing I do stand by though is I don't need this show to be art.
Okay.
Like that would be my takeaway from my interaction with this person was who postured themselves as quite the artist, and I believe them. They seem to um I personally don't need the show to be art, to be my art.
Okay.
I don't need like, and I think this is an important, I'd like your feedback on like I don't need to be a scientist. I don't need to be a writer. I don't need to be an artist. I just need to be what I think I am and try to be what I am. And you could be what you are. I don't need to be everything. Like
Un-
a
I do.
baseball player, a basketball player. And I think there's this undertone in our culture of entitlement and narcissistic proclivities that we all get the trophy in every class and we're all great at everything.
Yeah, yeah.
And I am an insecure person. I would like to be better at a lot of things I see other people good at because that's an insecure thing. But I shouldn't let envy or um,
Yeah.
my thirst for revenge or something overtake me and ruin what I am good at and like make me try to be lie to myself and say I'm an artist
Yeah.
when I'm not an artist, or I am this when I'm not this, or I am this when I'm not this. I need to focus on the thing that I am, you know. That's that's something that comes to mind. It's like I don't just get to be everything that I say that I am or think that I am.
Mm,
I have to, like, other people are going to tell me what I am, and the marketplace is going to tell me what I am too. Like they do value culture matters or they don't value it. They do value the podcast or they don't value it. They do like the book or they don't. Like, would I consider myself a writer? No. But I've authored a book. Maybe there are people that haven't authored a book that consider themselves a writer. I actually did author a book, but I don't consider myself a writer. Now, how much of that is my own insecurity or
mm,
the fact that I'm self-aware that I'm not a writer just because I authored the book. It's more accessible than it's ever been. I did write, I wrote things on the paper. Like plenty of people write things on paper. Do they go the lengths of publishing it? Like,
mm.
I've written many books that are unpublished for our clients, like dozens of them. If I didn't write those books, I could have published more books. Like,
Sure.
and put, so do I consider myself a podcaster? No.
Show. This is the greatest.
It's like now it's the truth is really revealed. It's like, oh, Jay just doesn't like labels.
Yeah.
But I'm making an argument that we need them. So it's like
Yeah.
the paradox
Well,
of this
that's the beauty.
conversation.
And that is the I feel like invincible. I feel like I want to die. Like it's like I'm an artist, I'm a scam. I'm a deep thinker. I listen to Kendrick Lamar when I make paintings. Like I just like, you know what I'm saying? Like I just it would be so nice to just live in this flow for a while, but like I feel like when I'm in this flow, I'm constantly distracted by this and like I'm like, well, let me just dip down real quick and get what you know, like fix this problem, then I come back up here, and then I like come up here and I like fix this problem, then I come back down here and it's just I never just live. I never just be. I never just be who I am. I'm constantly trying to solve problems, and I don't know if that's just life. That's just, you know, the suffering of life. That's just living. Um, it would be nice to not have to do that, but I've I feel like I've been unable to escape that. Um, man, this we are not talking about what we got on here to talk about, are we?
That's I think that's the way it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
No, no, but yeah, yeah.
Oh, Jay, you need to clearly define what we're talking about here.
Yeah,
Can't
exactly.
live in this ambiguity of like, what is the
Or
conversation?
else it's not art.
Yes, dude, I
It's
love
awesome.
this is
So
beautiful. So do we like, you
I
know,
think the goal here is, oh, there's plenty of time.
okay,
I think that there's plenty of time.
okay.
I, I think what I would like to understand so that I could share with you what I think I know is, firstly, is what was the date that you gave Dr. Jordan B. Peterson his first painting? So the audience understands the frame.
Yeah, so that was this January. We were in Tampa at the TCS Inner Circle retreat, and that was, I think, day, man, I can't believe we're in, or this was a couple months ago now.
So
Wow.
this is the top contractor school,
Yeah.
and the top contractor school had Dr. Jordan B. Peterson speak on Rule 9 and 12 Rules for Life, which is Rule 9 was assume that the person you are listening to knows something that you don't.
Hmm.
And Rule 4 and Beyond Order, which is notice that opportunity lurks where responsibility has been abdicated.
Hmm.
And Dr. Peterson taught these two rules and went word by word. Notice, he talked for about 12 minutes on the word notice. What we notice is rooted in our values, actually. Like going back to that Schopenhauer quote,
Hmm.
takes the world for his limits of his own field of knowledge.
Hmm.
Every man takes the limits of the world for his own field of limits of his own field of knowledge. Without awareness, right? So what we notice is rooted in our actual value system. What where our beliefs lie is where our attention goes.
Hmm.
So if your attention is leading you to things that are antithetical to your beliefs, then are they really your beliefs? And that's a deep conversation for our listeners to go unpack. I would recommend getting that book, The 12 Rules for Life. And if you haven't, going to Rule 9, notice that, Rule 9, and yeah, um, assume that the person you're listening to knows something you don't. And Beyond Order, Rule 4, notice that opportunity lurks. And the lurks, he went on for what, 10 minutes on that, lurks.
You know, so let me just I'll just kind of set the stage here, paint the picture here, you know, like however I can cliche.
Oh, good. Yeah, good word alliteration. So he
Uh
taught at the top contract school
yeah, so yeah,
and you
he
painted.
yeah, and the initial goal was to just paint exactly that, what I felt. Like from what he was saying, like what were things that stood out to me. So the painting is, you know, it is my take on what he spoke about, you know, it and the goal was not to paint something that would make people go, I love that. I resonate with that. The goal was to try to harness those thoughts. Some people write, some people, you know, take in information in a certain way. I can look at the painting that I did while he was speaking and remember what he was saying, um, based off of the color that I see, based off of the type of stroke, based off of um, you know, the aggressiveness of the paint. I have like a photographic memory like that where I associate images to moments, or it's like a timepiece for me. So I can look at that painting and remember the process of how it came to life, how it started with bricks because he was talking about foundations. Um, and then it moved from, like, the whole canvas is just bricks. And then, there was a lot of, like, I got into the painting and I was noticing I was having a hard time focusing on him because I would be like focused on the painting, and then I'd get lost in the painting, and then I'd have a hard time, like I'd have to like listen to him for a few minutes to catch back up to like what he's talking about. And that was more of a challenge than I had anticipated. So there's like moments of chaos in the painting because I wanted to keep painting while I was listening to him speak, but I didn't know what he was talking about. So I'm processing that, and the way that I'm processing that is just real time. Like, okay, what's the last sentence he said? What color comes to mind? Blue. Cool. I'm just gonna put a bunch of blue stuff on here. And then while I'm painting and not thinking about what I'm painting with the blue, I'm gonna catch back up to what he's saying. And then when he says something that hits home and he talks about darkness, boom, I'm switching it up and I'm going to the black paint, and I'm covering the top with a darkness that like cascades over the painting and like starts to consume all of the beauty that was there. And then he talks about a light that shines through the darkness. And so I take the scraper and I scrape the black away so that the color is back. And there was a target that was in the middle of the painting. There was like a he was talking about his dad, and um, you know, aim, and that stood out to me. So I started like making swirls with, a towel. I took a towel and started like swirling poked my finger through the towel so that it was like a point, and then like swirled it to like get the paint to go away so that there was like this negative uh target. And then I was missing the target with brush strokes intentionally. Um, Covered it. I actually painted I started to like just paint. He started to talk about his dad in the target. And then that's obviously, like you said, the things they say that are like heavy to you is what you pick up on. And so, like, in the middle of that painting, I'm painting a portrait of my dad in the center of the target. And it didn't necessarily like, you wouldn't have stood behind me and knew it was my dad because I was like using very like aggressive strokes, and like, the way that I was doing it, looked more like the face behind you, which I wonder now, like, was I painting my dad there? And so, like, um, that comes, it's the biggest trauma, thing that I've had to live through in my life was that moment. And like, um, it comes out in everything. I can't escape it. And so, like, I can either ignore it and paint, something nice that I think people will enjoy, or I can just be like, this is me, and I'm gonna reveal this at the sake of people not understanding it, and that's okay because I don't understand it. So like, maybe the truth is that there's things that happen to us, and there's feelings and emotions that we have that we can't understand, but it's okay to not hide them, and that's the truth. And so the process that I'm going through as an artist is really something that, I'm excited, but I'm also like terrified for, because it requires me to look, inside of myself to pull these things out. And it's not just me painting football players anymore. It's not just me. Now I do want to start a series where I paint monster trucks, by the way. That's why I've been setting up monster trucks behind me, and um, studying them. But I there's a reason for that too. So like, I don't know if I answered the question there, but I wanted to set the stage for what that painting for him was. It was me painting while he was speaking to our community, and you know, um, I wasn't supposed to present it to him. So that's another aspect to it. I was really supposed to just be in the back and do my thing, and like it, I didn't, there was never supposed to be like a reveal of that in the moment. And so about 10 minutes before they wrapped up, or maybe I remember it that way. I don't remember when the timing was because, you know, it gets chaotic when I'm, in those moments. I lose track of time. I can work on a painting for 40 hours or an hour, and it feels like the same if I'm emotionally invested in it for that amount of time. And so I remember Jenna actually came up to me and said like, "Hey, we're gonna have you go up on stage and like show the painting." So now I'm just panicked because I'm like, there's no resolution, there's no like end game here. I'm just painting how I feel. I'm gonna have to explain this to him and tell him like, this is how I feel about you, and I hope you like it. Like it's just like I didn't have anything thought out. I didn't have anything like planned. I literally just walked up there and and turned the canvas around, and his first and actually before that I was talking to Brian. So Brian was, he did the keynote. I don't know if he called it a keynote. He did like he spoke, and then Brian did like a Q&A with him, Brian Hess. And so Brian, being the kind person that he is, wants to bring me into this and like give a moment to me. And so I'm grateful for that. And I'm like, man, this is like, I'm going to step into this, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this well. And I get up there and I realize I have nothing to say because I wasn't anticipating this moment. There was no preparation. There was no, and he asked me, um, why did you choose these colors? Was his first question. And like I've spoke to him, you guys invited me when he was in Pittsburgh. Maybe like you share, but like in those conversations where you're just taking a picture with someone and they say like, "Hey, how are you? Like, nice to meet you." You might say like two sentences and then like you're a different breed. You can, because of the prep that you've done, you like, I've seen you in those moments. Like you have the ability to like get yourself out of the people pile without flashing a painting. Your brain is what gets you out of that pile. And like that's what I'm striving for. But right now I got to do a painting and like because I can't figure out how to communicate it. And so in that moment he asked me why I chose those colors. And the honest answer is that I don't know. I just like them. And that's what I said. And like I've replayed that in my mind like 100 times, probably 1,000 times. And then, going backstage and then like him asking me further questions about it. I just wanted to be like, hey, like, I know that you're a busy person, but like, I'm not going to be able to like really like articulate this to you right now. And that's probably a flaw in myself as well that I can't articulate that. I don't have an elevator pitch for why I do what I do. Like, it's hard for me to grasp that. So, yeah, like to me, this painting is kind of like redemption. Like I get to plan a little bit. I get to like I know a little bit more now. I get to see like that like you're gonna be presenting this to him potentially. So it just got my mind going and I'm like, I don't want Jay to have to feel like I felt when I presented this when I didn't know what to say because it's the first time I'm like, and I don't know. I'm like rambling now, but I'm just giving you the thought process of like why I thought it would be good for us to like do some preparation. I pulled you aside before I did that painting of him. I asked you, I was like, man, like what are some elements that I should incorporate in this? You gave me like so much gold, and then it just it didn't have time to like marinate to then go straight into the canvas and make it happen. It felt like I actually started to do that and then it felt forced. And I said, this is what I'm trying to not do. So I
Mm.
abandoned ship and I just started painting. Um, so that's why we're here right now. And I don't know if that's crazy, but it's the reality of why I'm sitting here at 7 a.m. now.
Here's my quote. I don't know. I just like them.
Dude, if you say that when he said like
The
what
most honest.
when you present, if you present this painting to him, we should do something really crazy. And then when he's asked, like, what does this represent to you? He's like, I don't know, I just like it.
Yeah, Vinny told me to say. So,
Yeah.
wow.
So I just threw up on you there a little bit, but I don't know. Hopefully it does something.
Well, what are you curious about? What in that talk stuck out to you that you either think you grasped that you'd like to share or you were unclear of?
Hmm. Um, well, the thing that stuck out to me the most was him talking about his dad, obviously, like you said. I mean, the quote at the beginning of this is true. Like, or maybe it wasn't the one he used at the beginning of this, but the one that the quote about seeing the things that are I don't even remember what the quote was, but like seeing the things that are prominent to you is what you
Oh,
take
yeah.
away. So like, I'm trying to figure that out. I feel like the reason I can't make art that resonates not just for myself right now is because like I haven't like overcome those things myself. I do feel selfish at times because of that. Like I feel like, man, how like get over it, dude. Like you're not the only person who's suffered. You're not the only person who's been through pain. And I'm like, okay, but like this is the pain that I went through. And like, yeah, my pain is different than their pain. Maybe it's more or less severe, but like the lowest feeling of your life, whether it's you didn't get picked for a football team or it's the loss of a loved one, the feelings I feel like are similar, and you have no idea how to gauge those unless you've been taken lower, unless you've been taken higher. Your lowest of lows is your lowest of lows, and it's to you the same as anybody else's. And so if you can connect with why that was the lowest of low for you, you can connect to why it was the lowest of low for them. And I'm just trying to get really fully in tune with the lowest of lows for me because I've ran from that for 6 years, 7 years. Um, and I feel like I'm just in a place to, stare at that abyss a little bit, to use your one of the paintings. That's the other painting
Mm.
on the other side there is you mentioned staring into the abyss is dangerous because it stares back at you. And you said that at that Denver retreat, and that changed my life.
What about it did?
I thought if I stared at the abyss hard and long enough that it would go away, um, and that it would become light. And I think that the biggest takeaway I have from that is that like I do have light, and I don't have to be afraid of the abyss. If I walk towards it, the light comes with me. And I've seen that happen time and time again in my life. Um, Different places I've been, um, you know, my role, that's one thing. My role is never clearly defined where I'm at. I've never had in my entire life a role that is clearly defined, whether it was when I worked at a church, whether it was, you know, even when I worked at like the most clearly defined place you can work as a car salesman, like I did everything, as far as like, you know, I, I, I just did miscellaneous stuff. I didn't do everything. I'm not saying I was like, like I definitely was not bought in at the car dealership. I hated that. But I don't know. I don't know how much further you want to go with episode one here, but I'm not trying to like invite myself back onto your podcast, but like
Oh
the
no, we this is like a process. We're this is not one episode.
okay.
We didn't even so the audience understands we're Vinny is painting a cathedral, metaphorically, of or a bridge. He's painting a bridge
Mm,
between yeah, a bridge with the purpose of connecting two cultures It's the tale of two cultures.
Yeah.
The fathered, the the benevolent king, the honorable husband, steward of culture,
Mm,
the Moses of of his people, and the orphan,
mm,
the yeah, the unlovable loved.
mm.
The Humpty Dumpty, the so he's painting a bridge between two people that may or may not connect, but for what, by but by happenstance, by chance, have connected in the world through their own autobiographies. Anyone that reads 30 Days of Thought will know what I'm talking about. Um, since it was authored before that I ever came in contact with this author. And I think it's too important of a task to have in one conversation.
Yeah.
And I realized this morning at 5:30 a.m. like this is really serious. There's things that I need to think through a couple things. You know, Preparation is one of the only things that's kept me out of purgatory.
Mm,
I was like
yeah.
scrambling my notes earlier, like, where is this one passage? Couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah. No, this has done a lot for me. I think it sets the tone for like what this moment can be. Um, and yeah, it is a bridge. It is I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, it is a bridge. And
It's a very important bridge.
yeah.
Culture matters. Culture matters came to me. Culture matters came to me in the company meetings that I led 10 years, 11 years ago.
Mm,
But it's my autobiography, my whole life. It's the culminating point of my whole life, my whole existence is what it is. And it has not been fully revealed because I haven't authored that book. Well, it's not out yet, but also haven't talked enough about myself. I've been revealing components of myself by just being like acting out components of my personality, which is, for example, listening to people. I can do that. I can just as well talk to myself, and preferably that. I did that most of my life, just talk to myself. I just recently started listening to people, and I decided to turn the camera on, which then poses the question, am I actually listening or am I just putting on a show?
mm,
And I think it's a little bit of both, but um,
yeah.
culture matters. It's a damn good idea. And it's not mine. I don't own it, even though, I kind of do from a trademark standpoint, but I really don't because You can't own that. And that's, or I mean, I guess Lucifer might think that he could, but you shouldn't. But it's a damn good idea. And if anyone that's actually read, like actually read Maps of Meaning, will understand that. And then look at this phenomenon. Okay. We're talking about a teacher here. We don't like our teachers. Fuck teachers. Like generally, anyone that's been in a classroom,
Yeah.
even if they get straight A's, they don't give a fuck about the teacher. They're trying to get to the next school or the next thing or appease their parents or be a doctor or, whatever it is in their mind, their own selfish gene adapting to their environment. They're not necessarily give a crap about a teacher. Now a teacher could come, be the patriarch of their life, the matriarch of their life, like and change their life as that pseudo parent and so on. That mentor, that steward of learning and relationship and so on. But that's outside of the self. Like we're not worshiping teachers here, generally. All right. We
Mm.
don't even, it's like vets. We don't give enough to our teachers. So what does it say about the world, Vinny, that 10 million people follow a teacher or, hundreds of millions of people have a negative view of a teacher. They don't, you know, based on macro political, they don't understand or that a teacher of psychology could speak to the zeitgeist of our time, at the level that they are. Can a teacher could just become famous, like an infamous all at once,
Yeah.
and such a polarizing figure, based, in thought in the world. Okay, we're just talking about a teacher here. So what's really happening is, or occurring is that if you look at this teacher's textbook that they taught from and worked on for decades, you know, the idea is fermenting at probably 12, 13, 14 years old and taking flight in the early 20s, when the writing started. And, 15 years of writing 3 hours plus a day, finishing this. It's not really not a book, it's more like a long lecture
Mhm.
or a series of lectures. It's a book about culture. When I was doing my research early on in my career as an advisor of culture, a student of culture, someone trying to figure out company culture consciously,
Mhm.
unconsciously trying to put myself together, having not had culture, a clear culture,
Mhm.
um, but consciously trying to figure out culture, company culture, and how to do business right. One of the references that came up in my searches when I was reading all these various books in all these different disciplines, I'd see this textbook, Maps of Meaning, Maps of Meaning. I never bought it. Only eventually I met my future wife, who's like, you should, get on
Yeah.
this Peterson train. And I had already listened to the 12 Rules and thought it was pithy and it was lame. It wasn't interesting to me.
Mm.
And it isn't as good of a book as The Beyond Order is, or Maps, obviously. It was Maps that really got me to say, oh, this is somebody worth, this is impressive.
Mhm.
And it was a difficult book at the time. I hadn't read much at the time. And so this is a teacher of culture. And so it's no surprise that they've been swept in the wake of our times as a pundit for various ideas that are fighting for control over society.
Mhm.
And we we have a relationship with them in spirit because of the work that we do with businesses. The work that we do with businesses, they're doing with a whole portion of the world.
Mhm.
And so you're painting, so the audience understands, we're doing this series where I'm sharing my learnings over the last 8 years, having studied 7 years, let's say, studied Dr. Peterson and his work, as well as many, um, many of the influences of him, and of course others that have influenced myself, like sharing my concept of his work and the things that I've been working on to honor his work with Vinny, so that Vinny can paint something in this in it can be in, yeah, so that your inspirations, your spirit can reflect on that canvas the concepts and the frameworks and the autobiography of this figure who we've been working with in spirit for years and years and years and years. And for, whatever coincidence, coincidentally, the care, how did he, uh, an eerie alignment in the interest around culture and that it matters. And, having no relationship, no influence over one another. And
Right.
me being very much the student in that regard, because age does matter, I think. And that's why we're doing this. We're going to have a handful of conversations around what we've come to learn about. Like, for example, you want to talk about preparation. Rule number 7 in Beyond Order is work as hard as you possibly can on one thing, at least one thing, and see what happens.
Mhm.
And in the spirit of preparation, I've known for months that I was going to have this interview time. So I've been preparing for months, rereading the textbooks, rereading the books,
Right.
inculcating myself in the literature, just like I prepare for an interview where I look at someone's all of the assets online, like LinkedIn, do the culture map, I have a whole process. So I reverse engineer somebody's life from the media assets online, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, all the Wikipedia's, and I draw a whole map of the person's life, like when they were born. I'll talk about it one of these episodes, basically. And then from there, now it's all in my head. I can then show up to the interview and just be completely immersed in the person and
Yeah.
let my curiosity shape the conversation and think, and it just becomes this. That's
Yeah.
where I could associate it with art, right? Convince myself that I'm something I'm not. But the point is that, yeah, it is. And so it becomes this a beautiful conversation that will live forever on the internet.
Yeah, that's
So
terrifying, by the way.
it's terrifying. And so I've been preparing for months by going through the books and rereading them and highlighting and filming a monologue series that our listeners know about on each of the rules. And so, for example, let me just tell my next meeting I need 5 minutes. I usually don't do that, but I'm more interested. I'll have to tell them I'm more interested in this conversation than I am on the losing respect. So I just text them, I need 5 minutes. So I have to tell them, hey,
Right.
I made a choice to do this. And yeah, so I just don't want people thinking that I'm not a dick sometimes. But um, the monologue series I've been doing on each rule. So I'm rereading the rules and then I'm taking notes on Microsoft Word,
Yeah.
my notes. I'm on rule 3, Beyond Order. Do not hide unwanted things in the fog.
Mm.
And so I have my notes in Microsoft Word. I put the notes originally in the beginning of the chapter, and then I'm doing parts like part 1, part 2 on each. So here's like the notes in the book.
Mhm.
And I put them to Microsoft Word, and then I'm reading them, and then I'm just attempting to teach the rule, and
Mhm.
and that's helping me prepare. And it's in some sense I'm honoring the teacher.
Yeah.
I want to honor the teacher. Um, and so I've been
Well,
doing that as a form of preparation. And I'd like to have Beyond Order done um,
yeah.
before June. So part of what we're doing is part of this preparation. And so what you'd like to know would be What's their story? What do they know? What did they teach? Why did they teach it? How did they come to that realization? What are these books? What's the contents? And so I'm going to tell you next time. If
Oh, let's go. I love it.
you're listening to this podcast, share this with somebody who has nothing else better to do.
Yeah, all the fake artists out there.
Share this with a friend that cares about art and culture and is a fan of Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, or someone that thinks that he's not great and maybe will change his mind. Follow my friend Vinny on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.